From November to May, I worked on Enemy, my first-year film at CalArts and also my first ever film. When I came back from winter break, I said goodbye to the sun and sleep and began animating. I'm just kidding, it was manageable but tough. By the way, if you haven't seen it, please watch that now before I spoil the magic. I'm going to take you through how I got this thing done from inception all the way to final product. Production took 6.5 months. So, at CalArts, you're expected to make one film every year. During your first year, there are some recommended limitations, a 90-second time limit, and being in black and white. Initially, all my ideas just would not fit, so I changed my approach to reflect these limitations. I chose to focus on a fleeting moment and a story that could be best told in black and white. In retrospect, I'm glad I stuck with the constraints. This aesthetic has so much history, and filmmakers have spent years perfecting cinematography using this monochrome language. I was able to learn about the era and use their visuals to inspire my own. Just like the way film noir uses light and dark to create suspense and mystery, I thought it would be a good idea to explore similar styles in my film. With this in mind, I started becoming more aware of the shadow patterns around me. My story involves one character being chased by the other, so when I was designing my protagonist, I looked at prey animals, birds in particular. I also used the details on shadow puppets as inspiration, but ultimately scrapped it because it wasn't worth the pain animating. Here are some sketches figuring out how my character would look in motion, and this is the antagonist. It's pretty much the opposite, long, spindly limbs and pointy features. Next, I did a few passes of my storyboard, and the purpose of this is to draft out what your film is going to look like, the pacing, character acting, camera work, etc., so that you can plan out what is needed in production. Creating an animatic is the next step. Essentially, you're putting your boards into a little more detail, fleshing out the acting and testing out the timing. Once I know how my character is going to move in a space, I can start designing my backgrounds. I struggled with making my environment feel specific, so I looked to the distillery district in Toronto as reference. It's one of the oldest surviving industrial establishments in North America, and being able to walk through it helped me get a sense of the architecture's scale, how it channels sound, and the way it changes with light. In the end, I don't think I was really successful in establishing a specific setting. Everything about my film feels pretty anonymous, so for my next one, instead of starting with plotting out my story, I'm going to try world building first, and we'll see where that takes me. Once I've painted all my backgrounds, I'll put it all together to create a color script, or in this case, a value script. Color and value are so fundamental to creating emotion, and the purpose of this is to see how your visuals flow into one another and connect the story emotionally. You might not know exactly what the plot is just by looking at this, but if I've done my job well, you should be able to identify where the film is calm and where it's more intense. Once I see everything together, I can go in and make adjustments to brightness and contrast to improve visual flow. Okay, so for these two scenes, I want my camera to pan from one location to the other. The way I'm going to approach this is to paint my background separately. Then I'll put them together in a larger page and figure out how to visually connect the two with the angle and the distance of the camera move in mind. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I know the perspective here doesn't make sense, but I think it adds to the feeling of disorientation. This is also animation, after all. You create everything from scratch. You control gravity, anatomy, and by all means, perspective. Now I can finally start animating. This is by far the longest stage of production. While painting backgrounds took me a week, this stage alone took me 3 months. This is my first time learning to animate, and I really struggled with my character, but thankfully we have teachers to help us. So Robert, if you're somehow watching this, thank you, from Michelle. After coloring and adding shadows, I move on to compositing, essentially putting character, color, and background all into one scene. In After Effects, I'll add camera moves, blurs, and glows to give it that cinematic touch. Alright, so my process for the next few scenes is quite similar, so I'm going to stop talking for now. Let's turn up the music and enjoy. To wrap things up, I'd like to briefly reflect on this process. I've realized the hard way that if you want to make a really good film, you need to put your best work into every single stage, or those little mistakes are going to build up. This story didn't come from a very personal place, and that's something I want to change for the next time so that I have the stamina to make it good. There's still so much I have to learn about animation, but the amount of artistic growth I've experienced so far makes me really excited for my future films. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you learned something.